Hello, YouTubers. This is Joe Bravo and Mo Bravo's Knife Reviews, and I have for you today a special holiday multiple deployment knife extravaganza. I don't know how else to say it. The last, I don't know, months, I guess you could say, 3, 4 months, I've been assembling a collection of knives that really put together how much I've enjoyed multiple deployment knives throughout these years. And I'm just going to take you on a quick journey and, explain to you guys where I think some of these knives excel, some of these knives need improvement, some of these knives I really enjoyed at the time, some of the knives that I've grown to love more, grown to love less. And I'm just going to jump right into it. So I think the first knife I'm going to give you is my Anton Knives Boudicca. It's been on the channel a lot. I've had many variations of this, but this probably was one of my first custom knives that I got from Anton. Was a side flipper from Anton. It had the cracked ice nebula blade, had the Damascus pockets. It was beautiful. Fast forward, a year, I started getting more into multiple deployment knives after I purchased the Cortex. I was able to get this back from somebody on Instagram or Reddit, and had this beautiful clip with the Anton newer style with the collars, and I just loved it. But it was just a flipper, and I was like, man, do I just want a flipper, or do I want something that I could do multiple deployment with? Um, and therein lies the command strip and the Velcro. And I've been enjoying this knife. It's probably the knife in my collection that I've had the most. Not probably, definitely. I've probably had it for more than 6 months, and I love the shit out of it. I don't know how else to say it. The other Antons I had did not have this texture Cerakote that he puts on there. And man, do I enjoy it. And something really cool that he's doing on these smaller ones, he's using the larger clip, and that clip goes really high. So when I first started flippers, I mean, if you followed the channel, frame locks and flippers never really lined up for me. But with that pocket clip riding all the way up there, you can avoid that frame. And man, has it been an exceptional knife for me. I love it. It carries great in the pocket. Awesome. But it's got Velcro on it. So I said, okay, well, what can I do about it? So I went to Anton, and I don't know if you call this the Holy Grail or not, but this is basically what I started my journey with, and I think I may end my journey with being my favorite knife, or at least my favorite knife of the year, would be this Anton Knives Boudicca front flipper deployment and stud deployment. And he just rocked this, knocked it out of the park. It is fantastic. It is exceptional. I love every bit about it. The detent is crisp. The action is full shut on that IKBS bearing system. And I really wanted to just showcase it and compare it to a couple of the other knives that I've really grown to enjoy that have utilized thumb studs and front flipper method deployment. And just give everybody a little bit of comparison about why I think this may be my favorite knife of the year, my favorite knife of all time, or, at the end of the day, what I've been looking for this entire time in my journey and what I've gotten to, and how Anton, I'm so thankful, knocked it out of the park with this design. And again, share it with you guys, because I know Anton isn't as much of a name brand as some of the other guys out there, even though he's been doing it forever and does really quality work. If you don't have a chance, go to his Instagram, Anton Knives, and take a look at some of the stuff he's doing. He's doing work with Mammoth. He's doing work with the Damascus inlays, Meteorite, Cracked Ice Nebula. He does the Dragon Skin blades. Just really quality knives in multiple blade variations and styles. So really does exceptional work, and I'm really thankful he was able to work with me on this one. So I'm going to start back at the beginning again. I know we talked about the Boudicca with the flipper being the beginning, but I really have to thank my friends. This Cortex I really enjoyed, but I struggled to deploy with spidey flicking. It was really something I wasn't good at, and this is the knife that my friends would allow me, were teaching me how to spidey flick properly, and I could do it mediocre, it's just haphazardly. But I wouldn't say it was my favorite deployment method, especially with this Cortex. The top flipper is so fun, and this was probably my first multiple deployment knife. Spidey flick, pointer finger flick, and I would call it like Zippo lighter flick. And overall, it probably became one of my favorite knives. I know on the channel I say it all the time. It's probably my 14th or 15th variation of the Cortex that I've owned. This one does have the older style milling, which I really enjoy, and it is a V1, which means no pivot collar, and the pocket clip is still the same traditional pocket clip that Craig was doing back in 2021. And this is where I started. This is ground zero, and the transitions that I've made probably went next to the BBM. Again, a knife that you've seen on this channel a shit ton. The original BBMs that I had were whole deployment, and I bring this up because I still think that this is a multiple deployment knife. Even with the studs, if it was a hold knife, you had your whole deployment, and then you had your forward deployment. So by definition, I still do think the BBM in either comparison or either variation, whole or stud, is still considered a multiple deployment knife as long as it has the fuller. I really enjoyed this knife. I enjoyed it the first time I flicked it as a Holy BBM, and I was in Easton, Pennsylvania a little while ago, and a buddy of mine had this, and I saw that he threw it up on Blade for him, and I had to make a play at it, and I have been enjoying it ever since. I think what gets we don't normally see, or you can't understand until you flick it, is how much blade stock is in the front here, and how that compares to how thin and light these titanium scales are. And when you deploy it, it reminds you, it comes out with authority. I mean, and you could really ride the lock bar, being that it's a frame lock, and it just wants to scream out. And man, is that enjoyable. And the thumb stud deployment is so satisfying because, again, it's a smaller knife. So I really, in the pocket clip, just to show you the difference between the pocket clip, Anton's really understanding that the taller pocket clip is almost more beneficial when you have a frame lock exposed as much as he does. If Nick threw that all the way up here and I could get up on that pocket clip up here, then I wouldn't have ripped thumbs, because when you miss, these thumb studs are not forgiving, because you really like to ramp that up. And if you got too much pressure on that lock bar, you're going to be in trouble real quick, and you're going to remember it. So, that would probably be my second step on this journey. I'm going to follow it up with the Asuka. I know everybody's seen it on the channel, the frame lock Asuka I had forever. Probably one of my favorite knives of all time. It's okay, though, because a good buddy of mine has it, and I don't mind sharing it. You know how it goes. You can't keep everything because you can't keep new stuff. But I'd say this is the OG front flipper, studded flipper that I've really, really enjoyed throughout the years. The thumb deployment is great. The Spidey flicking is great. Being that it's a liner, I could over the top it. I can panty drop it. I could thumb deploy it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is just fabulous. And I really think everybody should at least go out and try an Asuka once. Next, going into the progression, I would say, I forget if it was the Waka or the Meads. So let's go with the Meads. This is my first custom build with Thies Mead, Mateus Steeds. Yeah, I always get it wrong, and I'm sorry. But this is a multiple deployment knife because you could Spidey flick the blade. This is a 4-inch full-size Dino flipper, and I'm telling you, there are a few knives that I've owned that were this well made. All the finishing, he really does a great job with this Gicarda, this zirconium shield inlay in there, plus the collars. Look at, I'm looking for the stud. And it's funny because I keep breaking Meads chops like I was breaking Anton's chops, where I think, a frame lock, because how do I say it? This is probably my favorite flipper tab of all. And I'm going to show you why. I really enjoy like a Sham or an LEXKX or an LEXK Plus by Berger. This rolling method is so satisfying as a flipper tab. And Anton's flipper, if you see here, I guess this would be more like an Atlas or a Lespec or a Remy Laval or the GTK, where you don't get on top and roll it over. You have to be at the side. Even Kurt American, and the Ultimatum that I had that style. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad style. I'm just saying that the Meads Dino deployment is so fun. But again, it's a lighter action. It's definitely not a frame lock. It doesn't have a strong detent. In fact, you can almost misflip it sometimes because it's so weak. But yeah, is it enjoyable? It is. It really is. So, this is what's great about being able to try different makers and seeing what you like better. I do think that this flipper tab is my favorite out of all of them. I might even think that I like it more than the Sham, and I'd have to go get another Berger LEXK Plus to remember. But again, Trevor Berger's flipper tab is very similar to this, and I really, really, really enjoy it. But again, multiple deployment knife, thick liner lock, no frame to be bothered with. If you can get your hands on one of these dinos, one of his natives, he even has the Flow, which is his taller, skinnier version that I want to try. Do it. You're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to be disappointed with the action. You're not going to be disappointed with the quality. You're not going to be disappointed with the finishing. He really just kills it. And I certainly recommend any of his work if you can get it. Next, I'm going to transition over to the Waka. Now, when I had this Waka a year ago, it was on the channel. I compared it to a Peña Mula. And it's so funny that I enjoyed the Mula better because it was a bolster lock and because at that time, this is being a Waka 3.1, Edison was making this knife with a really stiff detent. And shit, I love a stiff detent. And it is just as stiff as I remember back in August of 2021. What's funny is he used these custom wonky shark-like studs, and they look great, except they are sharp. So back a year ago, even more than that, I didn't care for this knife because it hurt to deploy. Especially as sensitive as it is with the frame lock. Again, I'm going to go back to how Anton is really doing it, how I'd like to see it. This longer pocket clip gives you a lot more prevention of getting onto that lock bar. And I'm going to tell you, Edison's jimping, it's sharp, and the studs are sharp. So when you ride that frame lock, again, you remember it, even more so than the BBM. The problem is it's like you burned your mouth with pizza, but you can't stop playing with the roof of your mouth. It hurts, but you want to just keep fucking with it. And I don't know why, but that's really what I think about this 3.1 Waka. I've had 3.4s where they've lightened up the detent and they've changed the studs to the TI connector. It's not as satisfying. The 3.1 is amazing. It hurts. I mean, it really does. It hurts when your hand lands on the jimping. There's a couple of sharp corners on the pocket clip. The studs, I'm telling you, when you think about using my pick, where all I have to do is touch the stud, or even the BBM, if you're off the frame lock, it's just a nice push forward, very enjoyable. Whereas if you forget that you're using this stud on this Waka and you do upward pressure, man, it's like immediate pain in that front tab of your finger. And then you go back and do it again. And then you go back and do it again. And then you go back and do it again. You're like, why is this so enjoyable? And I think in comparing it to the Anton, Edison's blade stock and width of this blade is so heavy that when conjoined with the stiff detent really gives it a satisfying slap. And the same can be said with riding that lock bar and deploying it with the thumb studs. It is just so satisfying. Even though it is, I want to say, less refined, or because you know, Anton's knife with this rubber, even his custom studs that he makes, I don't ever really see myself saying, ouch. Is his detent a little bit lighter than the Waka? Yes. Outside of that, I'm telling you, they're really similar, really, really similar. Um, but the Waka slams harder, and the Anton is, I guess you could say, I don't want to say more enjoyable, but a little bit of easy use without having to think about it to get the same function down. In addition to that, in comparing them, Anton uses a standard tooling pivot, where with the Waka, you need to use the special proprietary tool. On the other side, Anton uses IKBS bearings, which is kind of similar to multi-row bearings, where the bearings are loose and they sit in a race. But, I've had this one for over a year. I carry it and I use it, and I've never had to take it apart. I think the same can be said with the Waka. Don't let proprietary or loose bearings be the thing that deter you from trying these knives. They're excellent. So next on the journey, I think I went to the Steve Carroll Knives Pick. And, when I bought this knife, I had it about a year ago as well. And it was new. It wasn't broken in. It had a couple of hot spots. I wasn't really great on front flipping frame locks in a small platform. I thought this knife was going to be too small for me. And then when I got it a year ago, I said this would be a great knife if it wasn't a front flipper, because the front flipper wasn't executed as well. And I think I was wrong to say that, because, man, buying this back, having it a second time, understanding the dynamics about the flipper tab, it is an excellent knife. It really is. It is fidget friendly, running on cage bearings. You could over the top flip it. You could spidey flick it. You could thumb flick it. And, I had a Roosevelt, and I know Roosevelt's a great EDC knife. Everybody loves the Roosevelt. I'm going to be honest with you. I would pick the Pick over the Roosevelt any day of the week. Mainly the price point, you can still get these at about what a Roosevelt cost table. The deployment is excellent. The pocket clip is excellent. It rides really nice. This finish hides a lot of the snails, which is great. You don't want that to, the smooth scale Roosevelts definitely show this wear a lot more than this stone wash that's in this one. And I know it sounds funny, but this carries thinner in the pocket. I can actually slide my hand inside my pocket with this knife in it, where I feel like the added width or height of the Roosevelt, it's like you got to cant it, and now you're up against it. And I know it sounds dumb, but how a knife carries in your pocket is almost as important as how the knife action is to me. And Anton really does a great job with this pocket clip, which slides down and it cants back to your rear, and it really allows you to get your hand in there without having too much, in the way. And I never care for when a knife cants towards your groin, because now it's just taking up so much surface area, starts to ride into your leg. And, Anton does a great job with that. I'm going to say Nick Marshall does a great job with that. And Steve Carroll does a great job. I think the Meads Dino sits a little taller. It doesn't go as far in. It looks great, don't get me wrong, and it's a beautiful knife that you want to be seen. But is it my favorite carry? No. The Cortex, it does sit really nicely. But, this pocket clip, the way it sweeps up, you understand why, Craig made a modification to that later on in the revision. And it does have some sharpness to it. The Asuka really does sit really well in that pocket. It gives you flexibility. It sits back, to your backside, and it's really comfortable. It is long too, and something that I like. I like having a long pivot. Some people might think it gets in the way. I would rather have a longer pivot to give it more stability inside the pocket. But I'm going to be honest, this Pick really has outshined a lot of the stuff on this board. And this pick, I think, is going to go with the Anton flipper that is probably going to be keeper status. I don't know if the rest I could say are keeper status. Like, even the thumb stud one, it is fabulous. It's probably my favorite knife of the year. But I think I might go back and see if Anton can make me one with some Damascus to kind of match the flipper, maybe a Damascus clip and a spacer just to kind of give it a little bit more pop. Because I enjoy that flipper only one so well. But he really did execute this fabulously. And if you can get an opportunity to pick one of these up, I certainly recommend it. The last knife is the 3-inch Asuka from Maverick Concepts. I really wanted to try this knife as my first Asuka I had was a 3-inch inset lock, and it did not have the flipper tab for try opening. And when this one came up, I jumped on it. It is a bolster lock configuration with the jerk twist, Dama steel, and a Gibeah meteorite pivot with zirconium scales and a bolster lock, again with that long pocket clip. It makes it so I can deploy in all methods and still have nice firm grip on the scales with my big hands and not be in the way of the lock bar, which has really been great in using this knife. Is it for me? To be honest, I think I prefer the pick over the hold Asuka. It's like, you're funny. You have both of these knives. They're the same size, but one just fits my hand a little bit better, and I think that has to do with the frame lock and where my hand rests inside holding the knife. And I think also where I hold it and deploy it with the thumb stud when I spidey flick it is a little different than how I have to hold it for my, side left flick. And I don't really kind of go up like that on a regular basis with the hole. So I know it's like little ergonomic differences like that, but, that's why I think this Asuka is going to be going. Where else? This Asuka will probably stay a while. This BBM is excellent. Is it my favorite multi-deployment studded knife? No, I think the Anton gets that one right now. And I think the pick, it's really hard to figure out if I like the pick better than I like the Anton. Right now, I think I'm going to go with the Anton just because of how much I'm enjoying it. It is a new knife. Panty dropping this. I mean, I really think this is the best deployment method for this knife. It just fits perfect, and you feel so cool doing it. The thumb stud is working great. I've been trying to talk to Anton. I don't know if using TI connector studs would improve this or not. I might just try and throw them on there to see, because these are the custom studs that Anton's making. They do a great job. They give you a nice purchase with your thumb or your middle finger pad of your finger. You could use your nail. You could ramp it up like a Sabenza and ride on that blade like the flipper, utilizing the zip, the Velcro, the command strip. But man, he freaking killed it. So the Meads is probably going to go because it's just still a little thick, even though it is probably my favorite flipper tag. If it rode in the pocket a little bit better, if it was a frame lock, I'd probably keep it. But I think that one's going to get a new home. The Waka is going to get a new home just because these are so scarce that, a buddy of mine asked me to let him have his first one, and I don't have any issues sharing. That one's going to stay a while. The Cortex, it's like indifferent. I've had so many of them. I love them. If I, decided to part with it, I wouldn't cry about it because I'd probably find another one later on down the road. A buddy of mine, Tommy, does the same thing with the Exponent. I think every 3 or 4 months he'll throw an insert for an Exponent because he really, bonded with that knife. And that's really where I think I feel with the Cortex. But, is it a forever piece? I'm not sure, but this pick is probably going to be a forever piece. This Anton with the flipper is probably going to be a forever piece. I'm going to get another one from Anton with the Damascus, and then that's going to be a forever piece. And then I'm going to make a decision on the Asuka. This Asuka is staying away for a while, but I really want a frame lock configuration. It's just what I'm into. I like it a little bit more, having a little thickness is going to be, I think, improved. And Nick's inset locks are nice, but I don't think he's been able to get as strong of a detent utilizing the inset lock. And I'm a glutton for punishment. So the stronger the detent, the more thwack on it is really what really gets my, satisfaction going. And, multiple deployment knives. I mean, I'd love to see more from more makers. I know Ian from CMF did a front flipper studded knife he had for, I think it was CCKS. And I'm trying to remember who else. A lot of the production guys are doing it. Renegade Customs doing it with their God of Mischief. And who's that? The Nimble and Vero. And, everybody's realized that giving people multiple deployment methods are great. Execution of that is a little different, and how well it's executed and finished in the custom world. Even Canison had the Camden, which had multiple deployment methods, but never really caught on. If you wanted my favorite multiple deployments, the Cortex, the Waka, the Asuka, the BBM, the Pick, and now this Anton, the Dino. None of these are going to be a disappointment. They're really, really, really quality knives. All I'm doing is telling you and anybody who wants to listen about how these knives fit into my hands, fit into my needs, and how I feel about them. Please, I recommend everybody get these in your hand, get one of them, get two of them, and figure out what works best for you, because you don't know unless you try. And then once you have them, then you really got to, in a world of shit, trying to figure out which ones you're going to sell because you like them so much. So thank you so much for your time. I thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for indulging me. 26 minutes if you're still listening. God bless. I hope everybody has a great holiday, and I can't wait to see what gets on the channel in the new year. So you guys have a great one. Take care.